As soon as that clock starts, your ass is mine.
When I met Justin Herbert, man, that dude is big as hell.
The goal is to just keep it rolling.
Come in hype because we have a lot of things to be excited about.
All right, guys, we're back with another Bolt Insight, and we are super lucky to have one of my bros, one of my podcast brothers, Jake Hefner from Chargers Unleashed. What is going on, brother?
What is happening, man? I always love coming on here with you guys. I'm still waiting the next time that we get to do the Halloween episode and go through all those Charger movie connections. You know, screw Halloween, dude. We just need to figure like a different category out.
Yeah.
And maybe like make it like a bi-monthly thing or however frequently we want to do it. Let's go.
We talked about you're passionate about horror movies, as am I. We do podcasts. You know, maybe there's something there. Who knows? You know, I'm just gonna throw it out there. Who knows what happens in the world, but I'm just gonna put it out there. But people are here to hear about the Chargers, so let's kick it off. I haven't talked to you in a minute. The last time I talked to you, we didn't have Harbaugh as our head coach. So
yeah, how long it's talked.
It's been a minute, dude.
It's too long.
It's been too long. So, you know, you've talked about it. We've talked about it like, you know, nonstop. But your impressions and thoughts when we landed the dude.
I mean, chaos.
Our pets' heads are falling off.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the best possible way.
Yeah.
You know, if you were in Bangor, Maine, you could hear the eruption come from California when it was announced that Jim Harbaugh was going to be the next head coach of the Chargers. I mean, my God, what an atmosphere, what an aura that one individual brings to you when you have had to go through the number of coaches that you've gone through since the Marty Schottenheimer days. And even still, just, you know, Marty being Marty, like Marty was established and, you know, had been coaching for a long time in the NFL, never, you know, quite had the success, but still brought the Chargers to some really solid years and nice playoff runs. But to have Jim Harbaugh, like you've never seen anything like this before from the Chargers standpoint, to just have that type of guy land for you. And it was simultaneously because here went all the old school Chargers rhetorics of they're too cheap. They don't pay the big time head coaches or the players and this, that, and the other. And then Harbaugh happened. And then you see all the corresponding moves that have been made since then. I mean, they backed the Brinks truck up to his house, no doubt about it. And then to even hear about the corresponding moves from the coaching staff that Harbaugh wanted and the Chargers made that happen. I mean, it was a whole other dynamic within itself to say, wow, are they actually turning over a new leaf when it comes to putting into this franchise? And thus far, with the combination of Joe Ortiz, John Harbaugh, and the rest of the staff, it's hard to argue. But now it gets gritty.
Yeah, we're going to find out pretty quick. Oh, man, the staff has been interesting, too, in the fact that he's bringing in former Chargers. He's like really, it is the biggest staff that I remember seeing for a Chargers team. Trestman is just like an advisor. You know what I mean? Like we're not an advisor team. We don't have that position on our staff. So
right.
It's pretty cool to see what they did. They kind of opened up the checkbook, and this is an expensive staff. So hopefully good things happen. But, you know, with that said, bringing in new coach, new GM, there's going to be some changes. And there was a change that happened recently that none of us saw coming. You know, we weren't prepared for it. And that was the Keenan Allen trade. What were your thoughts on that? And kind of what have you, now that we've had time to sit with it for a minute, what do you think, you know, after that?
The first thing I did was pour myself a glass of 12-year-old Dalmore for Keenan Allen.
Bring out the good stuff.
That was definitely warranted for that occasion. You know, you get past the emotion of it, which was tough. It's very hard to go into next season not seeing 13 on the field.
Yeah.
But you do understand the business aspects of it. Now, like, granted, out of the big four contracts, Keenan Allen was the last person that we thought that was not going to be playing for this team.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at that move, and at that point in time, the Chargers were cap compliant. They had already restructured Mack and Bosa. They had let go of Mike Williams. So they didn't necessarily have to do that move. But it sounds like, just from what we've heard from Joe Ortiz and obviously from Keenan Allen's standpoint, no blame towards Keenan Allen, because he had a phenomenal 2023 season. And, you know, for where he's at in his career, I don't blame him for not wanting to take a pay cut, especially after the play that he put out there. But in essence, you knew that even if Keenan Allen was restructured, he was only going to be on the team for another year, maybe max.
Yeah.
So looking into this new coaching staff and obviously front office and what you have to provide to Justin Herbert for the next 5 years, you needed to make a hard decision. And unfortunately, that came at the expense of Keenan Allen. Now, that's opened up another door from them in terms of salary cap. So they've been able to sign a number of value free agents. And I know we'll get into this just in terms of who's been brought in and at what cost. But, for what this sets up for the Chargers, not just for this season, but for seasons to come, it's a good thing. I know it's still a tough pill to swallow to not see Keenan Allen out there on the field, but, business decisions, I think both guys were in their right to do what it was that they did. Joe Ortiz said that they had come to him with a restructure, multiple options, and unfortunately just nothing was able to get worked out, and you end up moving on for an additional 4th round pick as opposed to a 2025 3rd round pick that was also offered from them. So I thought, given Keenan Allen's age and his salary cap, I thought that was actually a fair deal because I didn't know a lot of players that were going to take on the salary cap load that Keenan Allen had. And luckily for them, Chicago did.
Yeah. And that was the thing, too. It's like people not looking at, you look at the 4th round, they're like, oh, that's not enough for Keenan. We just unloaded a full $20+ million contract that now we can use for other players. And it's interesting to see what they're doing now because you'd kind of led to it. Some of these player additions, we are getting some like discount low contracts for guys that have been productive in the league. Maybe there's some, chances on some guys that maybe had some injuries in the past that still could come to form. We've never been good at that as Charger team.
No.
So the question is, what happens with that? How magical is Ben Herbert and his staff? Like,
we're about to find out.
God, I hope he's Harry Potter, dude, because we need some magic with that. So let's talk a little bit about some of the additions. The big one, it was like almost at the same time. It was like Austin Eckler gone, Gus Edwards in.
Yes.
And it was like a signal. It's like, okay, this is a different type of running game we're going to have for the Chargers. It's not that finesse, screens, get out, that kind of stuff. It's going to be hit you in the face. So, thinking about that and some of the tight ends we got, like Disley and Hurst, what do you think that means for where this offense is kind of pushing towards?
I mean, Jim Harbaugh's leading by the words that he's talked about. They've made it known how much they need to fix the running game. So yes, Gus Edwards is probably the worst kept secret in Chargers land leading up to free agency. It just made too much sense reuniting with Greg Roman in that type of scheme that he wants to run. And then you see the investment in the tight ends. Gerald Everett goes off to join Keenan Allen in Chicago. That leaves you with Donald Parham and Stone Smart on your roster. So you have to add a blocking aspect that you have not had in this tight end room for so long. And you go out and you get one of the better ones in Will Disley. You go out and I think you take a nice value shot on Hayden Hurst because he had some of his nicest years when he was under Greg Roman's offense in Baltimore. So does that pencil him in technically as tight end 1 because you still need another pass catching threat? So as of right now, I would say yes. So your tight end room is Hayden Hurst, Will Disley, Donald Parham, Stone Smart. I think that's a nice combination of what you now have at the tight end room in terms of blocking and pass catching options. And I think you fixed a few things that you needed to fix, obviously in the run game, which is not done yet. There's still work to be had as it relates to that stable. You go beyond that and you look at some of the other moves. Poona Ford, who I have been a fan of ever since his college days in Texas.
Sure.
You were talking about, possibly resurgence on some of these players. Had some, when he went to Seattle, he was great. Had some downtime in Buffalo, but if you can get that back, now it's interesting to me just from the standpoint because yes, you need to beef up that interior. Sebastian Joseph Day is gone, Austin Johnson's gone, and Poona Ford, obviously, as much as I like him, he's still outside the norm of what you would normally expect to be in the middle of that defense. Well undersized as it relates to that, but he can be productive. He can get low. He can get it after the quarterback. And he just is a little tree trunk back there. He can hold his own when he is on his game. You definitely still need to do some work in that interior of the defensive line. Christian Fulton, reclamation project? Possibly, yes. Yeah. This is another situation where Ben Herbert comes into play because 25 years old, there is definitely a room for a resurgence for him. Obviously drafted in the second round by Tennessee a few years back, but he's been dealing with some nagging hamstring injuries. And it just didn't seem like it was the best fit there for him. And from people that Dan and I have talked to that have followed Tennessee closely, they say it was just time to make that clean break. But they say that the dude just has all the potential in the world. So if you can, get him healthy, and again, it's only on a 1-year deal, but if you can get him healthy and you could get him playing, I mean, this cornerback room needed depth. So I wouldn't expect Christian Fulton necessarily to be penciled in as your, CB 1-2 aside from across from Asante Samuel Jr. I still think they're going to add to that here in the next month or so. But I think that these moves that the Chargers have made, 1-year deals, these are good moves for them in terms of what they need to set up. And we know that Joe Ortiz loves his comp picks. So let's just say you sign him and they have a great season, and you might end up letting him walk and you still get some value for it. Something that the old regime didn't really value doing that much.
We never talked about comp picks. So it was not something that was in the Chargers, vocabulary. It's not something we did or even really considered. So it's exciting to see what that could be. And, some of these guys, I look forward to this tight end grouping. We're calling them the Weasleys because they're my dudes. How often you get two ginger tight ends on the same team?
Oh my God.
It's what I'm talking about. I'm a fan. Weasleys. I'm excited. They're the Weasleys. Moving on. So let's.
I would love to know who in the NFL would be considered the Malfoys if that was the case.
I'm gonna dive into this. This might be our next horror movie version tight end combos. I think we found something.
We'll keep that one in mind.
We'll keep it in the back pocket. So let's get to. So all these things are saying we're building this roster in a different way, right? So it's slowly kind of molding. The draft's coming up. This has been the most interesting lead up to a draft that I've seen, and the kind of polarization of we're in a great place, but no one can quite agree on what we should do. Right? It's a very fascinating thing to see fans kind of argue and really get down in the mud and fight over what needs to happen at 5. So what is your ideal scenario? You personally, I know what I want, and I'll tell you after, but what is your ideal scenario to continue with what they've already started? You know what I mean?
I mean, if you were to ask me a few weeks ago, I've been the biggest outspoken advocate for the Chargers to trade down for years. I was asking for it for 10 years under Tom Telesco and never, ever got it. Now we're dealing with a GM who values trades downs. You've seen that through his previous work in Baltimore. And now you're in the position where you might have Marvin Harrison Jr. fall to you at 5.
Yeah.
Talk about the exception to the rule that just rips up everything that I was thinking of. I mean, this is the conundrum. And I've told Dan this, that the football gods are a fickle bunch. That, of course, the year that I believe that they're going to trade down and acquire more assets because they need to fill those plentiful holes that they have with more bodies, they may not trade down when you got Marvin Harrison Jr. on the board. Right. But I really don't. I honestly, I really don't know. And I know that this is kind of the conundrum with everything, because everybody's talking about, possible trade down with Minnesota. You move back to 11, you acquire an extra first-round pick, which I totally get. But when you're talking about a roster right now that doesn't have a Keenan Allen, it doesn't have a Mike Williams, and that Joshua Palmer is heading into his final year of his contract, and Quentin Johnston has yet to become what we need him to become, that's wild to think that you would possibly pass on the opportunity to get not only the number one receiver, but any of the big 3 in a Dunze or Neighbors as well. So you might be shifting your focus entirely if you end up trading down, which is totally fine and which I get. And my strategy would be corner if they went to 11. But if it is all about helping Justin Herbert, right? I believe that was the message at the end of the day. So why not select arguably the best player in the draft at number 5 if he happens to fall to you?
It's interesting because, we saw an article that I think it was Jesse Minter they were prepping for Ohio State, I think last year, and they're talking about how big of a problem Marvin Harrison Jr. is and how like their game plan was him. Like, we'll let anything else happen and talking about how he's like a generational talent, all this stuff. So going back and listening to some of that stuff, I'm interested in what these defensive coordinators that play together. We have a unique situation that we have our defensive coordinator that's been having to plan for some of these guys coming out of college. So like hearing their input on who is the most difficult to prepare for, that should be given a lot of weight, in my opinion. But I also, something to be said that Harbaugh keeps saying is the offensive line is the only position that doesn't rely on anyone else. Offensive linemen, that offensive line, everyone else relies on them to be good, to make stuff happen. What is Justin Herbert with an elite offensive line?
True.
How good have we seen him be with not necessarily the best talent at times, just because he's so freaking accurate? If he has enough time, it's like this weird like fork in the road. Like, which direction do you go? And I'm here for all of it. I know, being an offensive lineman and getting as frustrated as I have gotten with the Chargers and seeing the pressures on Justin and the hits on Justin, it's easier for me to be like, okay, go get the best tackle.
Yes.
Let's get the right tackle and let's have 3 first-round picks on the offensive line for the next however long and keep him safe. Because if he's safe and he's playing in games, we have a chance. If he's not, it doesn't matter what wide receiver you have. You're in trouble if he's not in the game. And that's all relying on the offensive line. So I've seen all sides. Do I want Marvin Harrison Jr.? Yes, I do. I'd be so game for that, but I'd also be okay with trading back, getting more capital, and seeing what happens and what wide receivers in the second, third round, like what you can get and make. Because like what we just said, like Jesse Minter has had to prepare for all these guys. So he has an idea of who some of these best, wide receivers are, and likewise for Harbaugh. So who knows, dude? Who knows?
I mean, maybe Harbaugh's sitting back, and maybe to your point in terms of the offensive lineman, it's like, I can't make my first pick as a Charger be an Ohio State guy, could I?
True.
It's just be like, things like that would be totally sacrilege. I couldn't possibly do that.
Yeah. But he did re-sign Joey Bosa though, and they were giving each other shit in that previous year. So
I'm glad you said that, because I was just about to bring that up when you're talking about listening to Jesse Minter. There's a few moves that have already been done where you can already understand that Harbaugh is listening to the coaches around him, and he is going out and he is getting his guys. If we recall, just before free agency opened, one of the first interviews with Jesse Minter, when he was talking about the edge group, when he was talking about Bosa, Thule, and Mack, he understood at the time that he might not have them on the roster, but he said, I would love to bring all 3 of them back.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to see how this draft ends up playing out, because I really think that Harbaugh is going to go to everybody that is in that room, whether it's Minter, whether it's Roman, whether it's any of the other skill position coaches, and he's going to pick their brain in terms of, okay, what is it we need? What do you guys want? Let's collectively put this whole input together, and let's create a badass roster.
Yeah, and don't forget Jesse Minter's dad is also on the staff, and who has the best, who do you lean on when you need really good information? You got to go to Pops.
Right.
So let's see what happens. I'm excited. I'm not going to be mad about anything, and I think that's what's exciting about this year is like I'm not going to be. What was it last year? We were like 17th or something. Where were we? I can't even remember what round we were. But you can't fathom who you might get. Now it's like it's very clear who we could have.
Yes.
So it's exciting, man. But I love doing this with you, Jake. This is so much fun, dude. Please tell everyone where they can check you out and your podcast and all your stuff.
Just Jake Hefner on Twitter, Chargers Unleashed on YouTube. Easy to find.
Yeah, dude, keep it up. Your interviews are amazing. You guys put on an awesome show. It's really fun to listen to.
Same to you guys, dude. Like, I always know if I need like a good laugh. I just be like, what's Chargers chat talking about today?
Yeah, they're talking about their ginger tight ends and having a good time with the Weasleys. That's what we're having.
Don't forget that, because I think that is something that we need to research and come back to and have some fun with as it relates to hell. Just call it like Chargers Chat After Dark.
Let's do it. Oh, man.
Who cares?
New segment alert.
Throw stats and everything like that out the window. Let's just have a comedy show about football.
Let's do it. I'm in. I'm in, dude. This sounds amazing. Thanks again, Jake. Appreciate your time, brother. And we definitely need to do it again soon. And hopefully I'll see you in person soon.
Absolutely, sir.
All right, brother.